the CAO conversation, council CAO conversation from the schedule. So with that, I'll probably turn it back to the three members of the ad hoc committee for introductions. I'm not sure what I'd like to do.
Thank you. So we're actually looking for, to approve this for information.
Yeah, discussion and then some sort of direction to come back to a future meeting.
Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I would like to move to table this item. This is the only committee that all of council is a part of, and I think it's proper for us to have all council present for these discussions going forward, regardless of whether or not we're just accepting it for information or not. I think it behooves us to have Councillor Blatz in the meeting, as well as all members of council. Thank you. I call to table the item.
Thank you. Would we move? I just have a question. So this would have to come back to the end of the month, which at that time you're also away on vacation. So are we going to table it again?
I would say that we would table it until the February 12th meeting. I checked with our executive assistant, and she said there was nobody on holiday for February 12th. And I believe that would be, unless somebody has not put their holidays in, that would be a perfect timing that all of council would be present to have this conversation.
Thank you very much. I just want to note, though, that as a mayor, when councillors take vacation, we still have to keep business running. I would just like to get some thoughts on that as well. Deputy Mayor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And I guess my brief comment, while I respect Councillor Ryan's position, I would like to see this discussion go ahead. The committee, of which I was a part of, along with Councillors Cummings and Daly, we had a couple meetings supported by the legislative clerk McKinnon, and so I would support moving ahead with the discussion.
Point of order, Mayor. Our procedural bylaw specifically states that when an item of table motion is put on our plate or on the table, that no discussion is allowed.
All right. I believe that is to be true, is it? Yes, it is. Non-debatable? Well, then we will have to vote on this. There is a motion. Okay, we have a motion right now by Councillor Ryan to table the Council Policies and Priorities Committee review. There's no discussion?
Until February 12th.
Until February 12th. And we do have to vote on that. So I would vote those in favor. Opposed? So that's been defeated. So go ahead. Our CAO has asked for the committee to have a discussion.
Yeah, that's I'm proposing that between councillors Cummings, Wilson, and Daly, that I guess they're probably easiest to start with the marked up bylaw and to introduce to council how they arrived at the changes that you see before you.
Would like to start. Councillor Cummings?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So if we want to go to the first page with an amendment on it that's on your screen right now, basically all we did here is we changed the name of the committee to the Committee of the Whole. It gives a better understanding, we thought, of what the committee's purpose is. It's just a committee where we're all here to follow the mandates that are in the bylaw rather than pigeonhole it as a policies and priorities meeting. We didn't really make any other changes here until the mandate section. you'll see there's quite a bit of red added in here, and that was to clarify the mandate of the committee of the whole meetings and what their purposes are. We took a couple things out, we added a couple things, and we added some clarity on what was to be discussed. The frequency of the meetings, this is really what we wanted is, I have the wrong copy up on my screen, so sorry, I'm going to use that one. The frequency of the meetings, well, we determine that in the organizational meeting every year, so there's no need to add it here into the bylaw itself. The chair position, just some clarification of the wording. The deputy mayor schedule is created again at the organizational meeting. It's not, and it's obvious, it's known, so it doesn't need to be added in there. When you go down to the regulations of the committee itself, if we look at the first one there, basically all we've done here is just wordsmithed it a little bit to make it sound exactly the same. Regulation 6.1, removing the red line, or removing it entirely. That's in the purpose of the meeting already, so it doesn't need to be in the regulations. 2 was just some wordsmithing. 3, again, was just some wordsmithing. It's a public meeting, so therefore we know what it is. We talk later about what the public can do in the meeting, so we don't have to say it twice. Part 4, again, is just basically saying you have to make an appointment to speak here, which is talking about public agencies. And of course, 5 allows us to go into closed or out of close as per the proper procedures of the Act. I mean, 6 is your basic function of a committee. It's asking questions, so we didn't think it was necessary. 7, 8, again, just taking some things out that aren't necessary in this meeting because they're already done in other meetings. So we just took that completely out. 9 is the way we deal with motions in this meeting, and that was the biggest conversation we had as a committee, is what differentiates a regular council meeting and a committee of the whole meeting, in that a council meeting generally should be a motion tabled, a discussion, a rebuttal, a vote. Whereas this is quite a bit of a conversation and developing even a motion. So we felt that a motion would have to come later, not necessarily at the beginning of the conversation, so that we can create what the motion might be. And that, because it is a venue of discussion, right? We don't know if we're going to send for further information, or we're simply going to cancel it, we're going to direct administration to do something. That's what the conversation's about. So it was more important that we focused on the idea of creating a motion rather than starting a motion, debating and voting on the motion, which is exactly what we do at council meeting. To do lots of stuff on there. 10. So 10 is what we found throughout all of the communities that we researched on about again, that big difference between a regular council meeting and a committee of the whole meeting. A council meeting should be a limited discussion on a topic, then a rebuttal, then a vote. Here, we're crafting things, we're doing work, we're creating stuff, we're providing a lot more information and requesting a lot more information. So we didn't want to limit how many times a person could speak. So in this case, we've actually restricted the chair. Of course, the chair has all utter authority and can dictate whatever the chair wants to do, but this part of the bylaw encourages that open discussion and has that process where we can have a conversation to create what we're creating as work, which is a lot more important than what we're doing in a regular council meeting, which is the vote on something at the end of the day. So if we bring something to this committee meeting, having that discussion back and forth, it should simplify and make quicker our council meetings, because we've already had that conversation on the bill or the bylaw or policy that we're going to be voting on, so we can say our piece, rebut, and then vote. Whereas we're not trying to recreate what we've already done at a council of the whole. A quorum discussion, we just simply cut out some stuff on there because, well, it's already in the MGA. The repeal process this is all administrative wordsmithing due to the changing of the original bylaw to the new bylaw revision dates and stuff like that. So in a nutshell, what we looked at is how do we differentiate a council meeting from a committee of the whole meeting? And we feel that this bylaw, where we focused again on the role of the committee, the process of the committee, we really do create a differentiation between this and a council meeting. If there's any questions or anything that the other Councillor Wilson or Councillor Daly want to add?
Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I'd just like to add that in our thinking as into making the adjustments and the changes to this policy was to increase efficiency for the council, as well as an information gathering session that we can disseminate information, answer the important questions that need to be asked at the time, and then when the presentation comes to council, it's more of a complete package, and all council and mayor is up to date and up to speed with what is being presented to them. And so the other thing that we kept in mind is that at any time, a special meeting can be called as well. If there's items of urgency that need to be discussed, that is allowed in our policies and bylaws to be able to do that as well. And so that can accommodate some of those other items that come up unforeseen that we need to deal with in a timely manner. So we're saying that this is one tool to use, but there's other ones that we can still utilize as well within our realm.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. And Deputy Mayor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And just further to comments by Councillors Cummings and Daly, and Councillor Daly touched on the efficiency or effectiveness aspect, but not only for council, looking to obviously streamline and improve efficiency and effectiveness of administration here as well. At the end of the day, we've recognized we have limited resources within administration, and so a key aspect of this is discipline to the process, which we, in our discussions, recognize that we all have a role to play and can improve in that area. And while Councillor Cummings did say, you know, a fruitful, fulsome discussion is critical and essential, also want to kind of step away from some of the extended conversations that we may have a tendency to get into, where we're navel gazing and hypothesizing and problem solving when there really isn't a problem yet to solve. So being brief and succinct through our discussions is a key part of discipline to process, and in effect, hopefully having quick and efficient meetings. And my favorite word's quick, nimble, agile. So.
Thank you. Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Mayor. And just to add on to Councillor Wilson's comments, is that another aspect we took into play was the transparency to the public as well. That these are public meetings, and that they will be broadcasted, and public is able to attend as well. And so you know, we all talk about transparency and being wholesome to our citizens, and I think this is a great tool to do that as well.
Thank you. I did have a question, but I see it's been answered in here at 5.1. My question in my head was who was going to chair these, but I see that 5.1 states that they'll be chaired, the meetings will be chaired by deputy mayors. So that answered my question. Councillor Ryan.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Dole, and I appreciate the work that was done by the committee. I don't really have any problems with what they've suggested here within the bylaw changes, except for the dating and having the chair as deputy mayor. The suggestion is for 5 meetings, but there are 6 deputy mayors, so how does that equate to a fairness in the scheduling? And we could probably add in an extra meeting if we just, we did the dates of when the meetings would be held, and add in August and December and take out a September and November kind of thing. So it could be worked around in order to have all 6 councillors who act as deputy mayor to be able to chair a meeting in 1 year.
Well, I have to say, I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to have deputy mayors chair meetings. It's very good for me to observe and be able to play a role in voting as well regularly. And also, it's good for the public to have you be able to voice your skills as chairing meetings. So thank you for that very much. Do you go ahead, Councillor Ryan?
Yeah, just supplemental, and I concur with what you just said, and also it's good experience for councillors to be able to chair, especially for the new councillors coming on board. So it's nice to be able to have that in a rotation.
Yes, our CAO Williams?
Just on that point, another thing to consider too, since the meetings will be set at the annual organizational meeting, as will the deputy mayor's schedule, council is in the prerogative can adjust the schedule to meet the DM schedule to meet the meeting schedule as well, if needed.
Councillor Walsh?
I guess I was going the opposite route of less meetings. What was interesting here to me was the mandate. Provide strategic oversight or monitoring, I think, is very important, but I think that can be done quarterly. Item 2 there is what I am concerned about. It's pretty well everything except the kitchen sink, and it opens it up widely, and I think that was the problem with the PMP meetings when we were discussing why we have them. And this is just expanding, changing the name and expanding it, and I really don't support number 2 especially, as all the additions to it. And I'm talking about good governance, open everything. It doesn't mean we need more time together. We're talking about a high-level, efficient governance process. Doesn't require huge amount of time, just good information and good support from administration. So I'm thinking this could be shortened to quarterly, and what's missing for me is who sets the agenda, timing of getting information for the agenda, all that. I see it as a wish list, but I would want to streamline it more. So yeah, I would probably not support it the way it is today, but I would look for streamlining this so that it's not so intense in people's time.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Those are good comments shared around the table, and I'm certain that could be brought back to the committee as well. I believe it was Deputy Mayor Wilson, then Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And again, just to address Councillor Walsh's comments, and I think that was one of the things the committee discussed to some extent, is how prescriptive do we want to be in terms of identifying items, and keep in mind that we're looking to what the intent of CAO conversation is, and items that are addressed there, as well as in the past what our PNP meetings have been and the content there. So yeah, it was a balancing act for sure in terms of trying to determine how detailed, how prescriptive we wanted to be in terms of listing items, and just giving ourselves and council the ability, as with administration, to have an idea of what potentially some of those items would be. They wouldn't necessarily be obviously on every meeting. And I just wanted to clarify with Councillor Walsh, so your direction would be once a quarter, so 4 meetings a month, 4 meetings a year type thing? Okay, yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I do agree that the listing is long and probably should have some of these items taken off. When I looked at the overseeing legal services and agreements, I don't know how or why we would be doing that at this level. I do think that we need to look at or oversee a high-level sort of discussions. Some of these things can be taken off. Delegations should go directly to council rather than council, committee of the whole. I think the committee of the whole is needed to do work rather than hearing from delegations. But I do agree that the mandate, in number one, I like the fact that it's linked to the strategic plan. And that's a really good way of going. I'm not in agree. I do not agree with having quarterly meetings. I do think that having them every other month is just fine and allows deputy mayors to fulfill a role. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Daly.
Appreciate the comments of the number of items in the mandate. But again, the committee was looking at, as Councillor Wilson has indicated also, that we didn't want to limit the area of conversation within this committee as well. We wanted that flow of information no matter what the topic area might be. And so we didn't want to, so to speak, pigeonhole the conversation within this committee. So we can definitely look at this mandate list that we have here and consolidate it to somewhat. I can see some similarities here that we could probably consolidate, but keeping in mind that we don't want to limit our conversation either in this.
I certainly do see some that overlap that certainly could be grouped. Councillor Cummings?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So what I would recommend then is that after our discussion here today, we take back the notes. I've been taking some good notes on what everybody's been saying. We'll meet again as a committee and come back at the end of the month with a revised or revision to what we're proposing here, listening to everybody's comments, getting a consensus going forward so that we can present here again and then have a debate on a better or more refined project at the end of the day. I just want to get some clarification on what people are asking here for Section 2. So Section 2, the very first sentence in the list, included but not limited to. So no matter how we pare it down or wordsmith it or shrink it, as long as we maintain that sentence, we do not limit the committee to any topic or away from any topic or from anything. And the reason why and Councillor Daly alluded to that, is a council meeting is where we deliberate and vote on things. And everything else should be done somewhere else, really. And somewhere else is this, because we've eliminated, or we propose eliminating something else. So that pretty much leaves committee. The committee of the whole is where all of council can see, hear, do everything else that doesn't relate to making a vote or passing a decision or a resolution. So if we look at that as a holistic approach to simplifying things, where in one place we do this, and that's vote, make resolutions, and pass bylaws and such, that's council. And then the committee of the whole is where the 7 members of this elected council sit down and have all of the other discussions. That's what we're trying to look at here. How do we have the discussions here so that we can speed up the voting process at the regular council meetings? How do we do things so that we're not doing them in both places at the same time? Delegations is kind of an odd one, because we don't vote on a delegation. We say thank you very much, have a good day after they present. So where is the best spot for that? Well, we're not entirely sure. This committee felt that the committee of the whole would be the best place, because that's a place to have information. We can then have discussions with the person who presented the delegate and find out more or less however we feel fit. Whereas at a council, according to the procedures and general rules of what a council meeting would be, it would be thank you very much. And that's it. Because we would have at most 1 opportunity to speak, maybe 2, and then that's it. Whereas we could have a greater conversation and find out more information from delegations through I keep wanting to say a military term there, I shouldn't, in the committee of the whole. So I understand what we're saying here, let's make it smaller. What I think the committee is trying to say is, let's differentiate between the role of council at regular council meetings and the role of council at a committee of the whole meeting. One is to make decisions. That's the way we see it anyways, make decisions, pass resolutions, yada, yada. The other one is to get information, discuss that information wholesomely. And if you think there's anything on here, and the reason why we kept, I'll pinpoint, the oversee legal services and agreements, navigate land sales and purchases, That was in the original bylaw. And the reason why they're in there is you can't really have a discussion about these things that are actually required by the MGA for us to discuss at a council meeting. It's mostly just, here it is, we're voting yes or no on it, right? So this will allow us to have a bigger conversation on those issues before they go to vote. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to. If it's a very simple issue, it can go straight to a council meeting, and that's why we have agenda makers. That's what one point Harvey made that I'm very keen on too, is where does the agenda get built, who builds the agenda, and how does it coordinate with the other agendas? So I think we'll happily go back and have another meeting and discuss and fine tune. I hope that clarifies why we really didn't pare down this list. We just want to differentiate what the purpose of the things that we do at the committee of the whole, as opposed to the purpose of the things that we do at a regular council meeting. And we might then change the wording of the introductory sentence to 2 to better define that purpose of what these mandate items are, to have a discussion and whatnot, get the answers we need and so forth, rather than a decision-making form, which is, I think, what everybody's agreed on. So unless there's some more clarification on how you specifically want us to shrink or eliminate that, we can work on that stuff and just have another meeting off to the side.
Are you saying you would like that now? Or you would like council to bring back, we've had the discussion at the table. What I heard you say is that what I am attempting to say is to receive the committee review for information and take back updates for the committee to review to bring back to a future meeting. Now, what you're saying is you want to know more about what that is?
Yes, Mayor. So what I'll do is I'll wordsmith a little motion here to bring it back to committee for refinement to bring back to another council meeting. We still have until the end of the month to do this, so we can still bring it at the next regular council meeting. One thing that's kind of ironic is the discussion that we're having here today about this is exactly the type of conversation methodology that we would like to see in the committee of the whole, and not here at council. Here at council, it would be, this is my opinion on the bylaw, this is my rebuttal on the bylaw, this is the vote on the bylaw. Whereas all of this discussion would be happening at a committee of the whole meeting, so that we could go back and forth and share our thoughts and wordsmith things to create a motion, which I'll do right now, that better fits the situation at hand and the discussion that we're having. So I'll wordsmith a little motion here that is, yes, asking to send this back to committee for further work, and then we'll bring it back at the next regular council meeting. Yes, if anybody does have any specifics on section 2 that they want us to address, then we can absolutely go at that. I did talk about how we could wordsmith the purpose of that list rather than the list itself.
Thank you. We'll give you a couple minutes, and Deputy Mayor Wilson will speak.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and I'll be brief, I believe. Again, for me, it's simple. When we talk the committee of the whole, formerly the P&P meeting, policies and priorities, much as Councillor Cummings had said, it's in the purposes for data gather, information sharing, council to review, obtain information, such that by the time and when we get to the council meeting, we can quickly respond and render a decision without elongated and extensive and verbose discussions and explanations. So I'm saying we set the table, set the platform, set the foundation in the committee of the whole meeting, and council should be very direct and very succinct discussion. Thank you.
Yes, as Councillor Walsh stated, streamline, which I'm hearing around the table. Do you need more time, Councillor Cummings? Councillor Daly, go ahead while Councillor Cummings finishes up.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to just to point out that in the original motion of the putting this ad hoc committee together is that we do have a timeline of January 31st to get the work done. And so gathering this information is great. It's good to hear the opinion of Councillor Walsh and Councillor Ryan. And I totally agree that we're going to take this information back and refine the areas that we've heard of concern. And bring back this for the next council meeting then.
Thank you very much for all the discussion. Are you ready, Councillor Cummings?
Yes, Madam Mayor. So I have two things here. One, we do have some email comments from Councillor Blatz, sorry, about the bylaw as well, so we can take those into consideration back at committee, and further comments from her as well as we progress forward here. So I'd like to put the following motion on the table, please. The council send back to committee the committee of the whole bylaw proposal for revisions and to present said changes to the next regular council meeting.
Thank you. We have the motion on the floor as is from Councillor Cummings. Any further comments? I'll call for the vote. He's just handing it to the legislation clerk. All right, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much for the discussion around the table and the work that was done. We will now move to, where's my agenda? Moving down to bylaws, please. This is page 14, item 4A, and we are looking for first reading. Do we want to have a comment with this or move for first reading? I'll just go with first reading, and if anybody has questions. Did you want to speak to it, Director Andrew? I see you're ready. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, just a few comments that we'd like to throw out for discussion regarding this bylaw revision. I'm going to start, I'll keep it very quick, nimble, and agile. One, my voice is failing, so, and then I'm going to turn it over to Sergeant Wright. This has been a lot of work in the last few months, and we've been doing a comprehensive review on bylaw in general. The community standards bylaw, as we discussed earlier, is a very large document, hard to navigate because of the size and complexity of it. And so, as we had discussed with council previously, that we were looking to try to break these apart, make them very nimble and agile and smaller so that citizens and officers alike can reference the material in a quicker and more straightforward fashion. So there is strategy as to why you're seeing the traffic bylaw come first as part of the breakout of the CSB, and it's because the traffic bylaw is a pretty standardized document. There's nothing inside this document that is new and outlandish as far as items that would be thrown out there that is a substantial change from what we have currently. So I just want to preface you with that, is that essentially this is breaking out what we have currently as the first little chunk. The plan would be is that animals would be second. Again, animal, you're not going to see a lot of change because we have done some work on it previously. And then we're going to follow it up with things such as public behavior, streets, parks, or persons and properties, among others. So the whole intent is to create a large thing into smaller pieces where people can easily navigate. I have a specific problem. I can put that in as a question, whether it's in our website or through the list of bylaws, and say it's logical that I would find my resolution to my question by using a keyword or a smaller document. So not 180 pages of bylaws, it's a 4-page or a 6-page or whatever. So with that preface, I am going to turn it over to Sergeant Wright because, again, this is the work that he's been doing, and he can speak to you about a few other pieces of it before you consider it for first reading. Thanks.
Before we move over, Sergeant Wright, just a note that your attachment should read 2024-0. It reads 2024. It should read 2024-06. Go ahead.
And I think Marcy's just trying to bring up at the moment on the screen, hopefully. Okay. So yeah, Marcy's just going to bring up the PowerPoint. There's only a few slides on this one. So I'll go through it, summarise some of the points on it. If there's any questions, I'm more than happy to ask or answer those ones. You'll notice that I've taken my body armour off So hopefully not too pointed questions there on that one. And yeah. Sure, that's fine. So like Director Andrews said, basically we've gone through, Marcy's done the bulk of the work on this one, gone through the traffic bylaw, put a revised version together. There are a couple of points on there on the last slide that comes up, that's the talking points, which I think in consultation with the CAO is probably questions that have come up before, or questions that you may have been asked from the public out there. And certainly I can talk about some of those. So just on the direction where we're going, let's have a look what we've not covered already. Comprehensive review of the applicable bylaws relating to the community standards 1. It's jumped on a page. Okay, the purpose. The purpose of the bylaw basically is to address the commonly occurring offences, or those offences not covered by other legislation. So a lot of the legislation that we use in bylaw comes under the Traffic Safety Act, but there are various offences that aren't covered under provincial legislation that we need bylaws to cover. Bylaws also allow us to set our own fees, address local issues. Again, they're not entertained by the provincial court system. And ultimate goal really for us is to get compliance for some of the offences that are going out there. So it allows us to set our own fee, which hopefully gets voluntary compliance. Failing that, the next step up for us is we elevate those tickets and they go on to a provincial legislation. So in practice, again, the goal for us really is enforcement or compliance with the current, with the offences that are being committed out there. We can use both pieces of legislation, so we could either use, if there's a provincial legislation like Traffic Safety Act, we can use that, or if there's something similar within our bylaw system, we can use that. The goal is really education and compliance. Bylaws themselves, our standalone bylaws, enables the town to communicate those bylaws out to the public. It allows us to change those bylaws if we see a need to change them. If there's an issue out there that crops up continually that's not accounted for in any provincial legislation, we can certainly change our bylaws to accommodate that. A lot of municipalities out there have gone to smaller, more agile bylaws as opposed to large, all-encompassing ones. And we have discretion when we issue tickets, what form that ticket takes. And when we do that, we take a lot of factors into account. Is it going to be paid? Is there a repetition of the offence? How much does it affect the public? Is there a danger element attached to it? Public safety attached to that? So here's the 24-carat questions, I suppose. These are the ones that we see coming up a lot. These are the ones that we tend to get a lot of feedback from the public. These are the ones that you may see some feedback from the public as well. Jaywalking, the fine schedule, 72-hour parking, RV parking and trailers. So probably, I would assume the easiest thing is to see really what questions you have regarding these 4 topics, or if there's any other topics that you want me to answer at the moment.
Thank you very much. We are just giving first reading today, and I'm sure we'll be going through this one more time when it comes back. But if council has questions at this point, go ahead. Councillor Cummings.
Thank you. I actually have a couple of points that I'd like to ask some questions about. So if we can go quickly to paragraph 40, subsection 2 of the bylaw, which is talking about off-road vehicles, town employees acting, basically giving town employees an exemption to the off-road vehicle restriction. Just a quick question, town employees is not defined in the bylaw. Does that include contractors? And the reason I bring that up is in the past and probably in the future, we've contracted or outsourced our weed control program, which uses ATVs to drive around town. If we pigeonhole ourselves to say town employees without a definition that includes contractors, we're therefore hiring people to basically break the law. So I'd like to see that change to include contractors as necessary. If that makes sense to everybody, I think that makes sense to everybody. And I don't know if we want to just go through my list right now, or if we want to bounce back and forth between people, Mayor.
Just do individually, go ahead, and then we'll give everybody the same option.
Thank you. So if we can go to 48. All the way down there. So just some clarification on intent with section 48. When I see section 48, I see that great, if any of those stop oil now people glue their hands to the roads, this bylaw allows us to rip them off the road, as well as other protesters and strikers. Is that the intent of that section of the bylaw?
I don't think it's expressly aimed at protesters. This is more for people that are maybe just walking in the road. Yeah, this is not expressly aimed at protesters, and having dealt with protesters before quite a lot, that we do have legislation kind of probably covering that, but this is just, yeah, I wouldn't say it's expressly aimed at that. It's just to deal with people that probably don't fall within any other acts. Obstructing a highway is kind of an offence, trucks, that kind of thing. Yeah.
This next one is kind of an odd one, and I apologize right off the bat for it, but 57, no person shall ride a horse within town limits. So it's not odd, of course, we live in rural Alberta, and nobody riding a horse without a permit is perfectly acceptable, and I believe that that's necessary in town. We don't want the cowboys going through Timmy's and stuff like that with their cows, I guess, or horses. However, I find it odd that in this particular section we talk about horses. Later on in the bylaw, we talk about hooved animals. We talked about hooved animals for sidewalks, pathways, and boulevards. So what I'm reading here is that I can ride my donkey down the road, but I can't ride my donkey on the sidewalk, which is kind of odd. I mean, we actually have a donkey-driven cart in every parade, because we have a very large donkey farm to the south of us, or to the west of us, sorry, that participates in that sort of thing. So I'm just curious as to why we've limited. I mean, I could strap a saddle on a cow. I can ride a cow. We actually did that in my hometown growing up. We saddled a cow and drove them through town. But I just think it's kind of weird that we've differentiated in this one section for horses, and later on in the bylaw, we've included all hooved animals. And maybe if we just kind of mesh that together and stop, just don't pick on horses, I guess, for the roadways, and pick on everybody in the hooved animals. It's just a comment. You guys can figure that out however you want to. I just thought it was kind of odd.
I think it might have been speared from the partner Olds Agricultural Society, the Olds Regional Exhibition as well. But anyways, you've
Well,
got
that's a perfect example, because they do cross the road with their horses daily from one side of 54th Street to the other side of 54th Street. So that's part of their business model and operational model. Are we now going to restrict them from that operation because they're crossing the horse without a permit? Are we going to have a horse crossing way to create a situation where they're not in violation of this bylaw because they're crossing the road?
very
So
good. Go
That's
forward.
just an interesting thing. I'd like to see a little bit of wordsmithing with the horse issue. The second last issue is 93. I did a lot of research on idling bylaws presented throughout our province, as well as some of the interesting court cases surrounding idling bylaws, as well as some comments made by our peace officer and previous peace officers about the enforcement of said bylaws. The number one takeaway I have of all idling bylaws I've seen everywhere is exemptions. In this case, there are no exemptions to the idling bylaw, which means that the peace officer vehicles, the fire trucks, the electrical service vehicle that's up in a bucket fixing a lamp, their vehicles are idling, and there's no exemption in our bylaw for that. Whereas if you look at a lot, I did see the exemption in Part 10. So unless I'm misreading Part 10 exempts them from Part 10, and only Part 10. So, because nothing in this part shall apply to. is the start of 107 of Part 10. So this exempts emergency vehicles under A, but only under the auspices of the discussion of Part 10, which is permits. So when we focus on the idling bylaw, there are no exemptions in the idling bylaw unless we reword Section 10 or 107 to create a blanket exemption to the entire act for emergency vehicles, or we add something into Section 93 exempting vehicles of the emergency nature as well as service vehicles. So let's be honest, if the sign outside of the co-op is ever going to be fixed, it's going to take longer than 20 minutes. And if that vehicle has to park anywhere and idle with the crane up, the bucket up to fix that light, it's going to take more than 20 minutes. So I'm not sure Part 10 or 107 exempts for Part 93. Correct me if I'm mistaken, but we absolutely need to have some sort of exemption in Section 93.
Was that your last one? Thank you very much, Councillor Cummings. Now I've got Councillor Ryan, then Deputy Wilson, and then Councillor Daly.
Thank you very much, Mayor Dahl. Some of the items have already been covered by Councillor Cummings, especially the idling one. I thought that was needs to have some exemption within that, for sure. I do have a quick question on the off-highway vehicle list, number 15. I believe it's page 18 of our agenda package. And that is, because it does have on page 19, any other means of transportation that is propelled, sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Ryan, that is directly from the Act?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, I
Okay.
understand that. I'm just wondering about where does some of the electric vehicles fit in within there, the electric bikes and hoverboards, scooters, skateboards, all of these things that have become, free range around town. I mean, I'm not saying that they're a hazard or anything. I'm just asking, where do they fit? Do they fit in the XI, which says on page 19, any other means of transportation? If you could just answer that, that'd be helpful.
Sure. So with the exception of e-bikes, so e-scooters, some of the other kind of things you see ripping around town, the little skateboards, the electrified as well, yeah, they're all currently prohibited vehicles under the Traffic Safety Act anyway, so they're already covered. So you can't have them in town and ride them anywhere on a highway. The only place you can use them is privately. So we didn't put them down under this one because they're already covered already.
Okay, thank you. So they would be covered under the IX.
Yeah, under the Traffic Safety Act, basically, they're a prohibited vehicle.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Director Andrew.
Yes, thank you. And just to further clarify, this is one of these pieces as we broke these bylaws down, is that what we're trying to do is reduce the redundancies in conflicting bylaws where we're at in our current state with our community standards bylaws. There are instances where we start to address items that is actually superseding our authority, or we have superseding legislation through such as a Highway Traffic Act or something like that. And when we start to meddle with provincial legislation by introducing municipal legislation, we always create that ambiguity where now you've created a loophole where you're likely going to lose if you ever try to prosecute it because it's already been addressed in a higher level. And so off-road vehicles is very much so, and you're seeing this publicly. There are communities that are dealing with the e-bikes, e-scooters, and things like that. And as it stands right now is that they are considered prohibited. And so, again, for us to try to maneuver and create a bylaw within other legislation creates problems. So it's easier for us to just stay out of that, let the province manage it as it is right now, and then we follow their guidelines as far as how we enforce it. And hopefully that explains it, but this is a prime example of that one piece of trying to stay out of, or stay in our right lane, I guess, if you will.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that explanation, because I know that we've talked about it in the past, and so therefore it's good to just to stay out of it altogether.
For that, Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Just through you to Officer Wright, within your PowerPoint presentation, you had mentioned 3 or 4 items: jaywalking, the fine schedule, 72-hour park, and RV parking and trailers as generating a lot of feedback. Could you just explain a little bit about what the feedback is? And I'm just thinking and wondering as well, how many citations do we issue? Not to the exact number, but do we issue a lot of citations for those infractions? And what do we see as far as corrective action, compliance? And obviously, in the case of jaywalking, it's basically, unless you see it, nothing happens, I presume, right? You don't retroactively act on a complaint. At least I hope not, because I do a little jaywalking, so.
Yeah, it's a lot of those have to be witnessed for us to do anything about it. And really kind of going through that list, jaywalking's an interesting one because it's technically not illegal within itself. What most municipalities do and cities do, they have their own bylaw legislation. That generally, we see a lot of that on Uptown Olds. So people cross in not within a marked intersection and get complaints about that. The 72-hour one is one we see crops up quite a lot. So currently, under the Traffic Safety Act, there is a legislation. You can't have a vehicle parked longer than 72 hours. It's considered abandoned at that point. So when we had this in our previous traffic bylaw, we'd get lots of calls about it from residents saying, there's a vehicle parked outside my house. It's been here longer than 72 hours. So theoretically, if you've parked your vehicle there, you've gone to Mexico, you come back 4 days later and it's gone, because we've ticketed it and towed it. So it's some of these acts that were in here, or some of these legislation that was in here, was, I'm not going to say the word weaponized, but it's kind of what was happening with that. It was, people were looking at it and going, there's a car, don't know the look of it, my neighbour's parked outside my house, I want it moved, we have legislation for that. So it was taken out, and we haven't included it in this one. It still remains under the Traffic Safety Act, so we were seeing a lot of complaints about that one. Trailers, RVs come up quite a lot. 48 hours, you're allowed to keep it there. The purpose behind it, you come back from holiday, you want to clean your trailer out, it gets moved. But sometimes they do get left there, so that's why we need that legislation in there to cover that off. And the last one was fine schedule. So the fine schedule, when we've looked at the fine schedule, I suppose, again, the goal for us is compliance. So what's realistic for us, giving somebody a bylaw ticket that they can pay in town without it being escalated onto a provincial legislation? What's a realistic amount? And I'll give you an example from last year, the tail end last year, when we issued tickets out for people that were parked in Uptown Olds. We issued 20 tickets. Only 2 of those have been paid. So we're not seeing a lot of compliance at the moment on our tickets. So when you look at the bylaw of fines, is that realistic, those amounts that we put on there? Because generally the TSA will have something similar in there. It may be higher. So if we can set our bylaws at an appropriate level, it encourages people to pay it. They don't have to go through the legal system. So we get lots of complaints. We issue people a bylaw ticket, and generally it's like, I can't afford to pay that. So, that's really for council, I suppose, to set those limits.
Thank you for answering those, and we do have to go to Councillor Daly, and then we'll go back to Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. Going back to, first of all, I'd like to thank Director Andrews and his team for doing this. There's a lot of work that went into this. Appreciate the simplicity of it, because of course your officers and as well as the public can help understand it. One thing that caught my eye was on item 15. Well, a couple of things caught my eye, but on number 15, it says miniature motor vehicles. And I'm wondering what the definition of a miniature motor vehicle is, whether that's a smart car, or whether that is a lot of these handicapped scooters with the cab on them and the single lights and everything that you see running down the road. Or now also in a lot of communities, we're seeing golf carts with single lights, headlights, those types of things as well. So I'm just wondering what would fall underneath that definition of that item?
Marcy's currently breaking out the Bible, but I think a lot of it depends on kind of engine size, and to really kind of put it into some context. So you will have your motorized mobility scooter in town. and that might drive around on the pavements, that's fine. And there is a couple, Didsbury have a few, we have at least one here, where they're more fully encompassed now, with lights on it. That falls under the definition of a prohibited vehicle. So currently that vehicle that's running around town at the moment is illegal. It's an interesting one because there's a lot of slide within it, and it comes down to interpretation for it. The TSA and the Alberta government does do a good job in that it stipulates on, you can look it up online, it shows you what miniature vehicles are, shows you what off-highway vehicles are, shows you what prohibited vehicles are. Miniature vehicles, a lot of those are those small little, almost like pocket bikes you might see that they're given away at fairs and things like that. So I haven't come across too many of them, but yeah, we haven't seen too many in town, fortunately, at this stage yet, but
Thank you for the clarification. I just, when I read that, I just thought that what is included in that, because we are starting to see a lot more of those enclosed handicap accessible scooters and so forth on the roadways, and maybe not even enclosed, maybe open station as well. And they are an impedance to traffic for sure when they're going down Highway 27, on the inside lane.
Yeah.
The other item I have is under Part 10, 107, and it was kind of brought up, not including horses, but agriculture equipment, agricultural hauling of materials and so forth. I do see a lot of it. As I live on the south end of 57th, I see a lot of equipment and trucks and trailers and so forth coming in from the north and from the south on 57th, heading to the auction mart and so forth. Is there room for exemption of agriculture? I know it is covered under provincial legislation, traffic acts and so forth, but I'm just wondering, do we need to mention it in here as well?
I think it's something I'll certainly take away and have a look at. I'm not familiar off the top of my head with it, but I can certainly go and have a look at that one.
I do note that Director Andrew had his hand up for your first question, Councillor Daly. Would you like to respond now?
Yeah, no, it's fine. Actually, so yes, in conversation as far as the definitions, the one thing that will go forward with this bylaw when it would be implemented is definitely the education and communication concept of advertising it and engaging with the citizens. And so the great thing about like definitions such as a mini car motor vehicle would be that the link to the Alberta government definitions would then be part and parcel with our bylaws, so that again, for the ease of reference for people, is that if they see something in our bylaw, if it doesn't have a definition, then the associated piece that they can get that information should be linked. And that is the goal. In a perfect world, they can't promise it'll be there day one, because inevitably I'll say that and then I'll make a mistake and then I'll own it. But our intent is to make it that way, is so that it is interactive, so there are no questions. And if you can't get an answer easily, then there's the contact to us. In second piece, because I'll answer it while I have the mic, as far as agriculture equipment, there's no intent for us to prohibit or outlaw the movement of agricultural equipment through town. It's obviously a big part of who we are and what we do. So we will definitely talk about how we address that to make sure that it is appropriate and reasonable. And it's the same going back with Councillor Cummings about, the riding of horses and things. We're not trying to specify, only horses are no good, but donkeys and camels and alpacas are okay to ride. The whole premise is just creating a basic level of understanding that, and it's not, again, we're not trying to eliminate that in a parade. There's provision. The CAO can approve that, so there's no problem. Are we trying to limit what would happen at the ORE? Absolutely not. That's never the intent. We appreciate the feedback, and we will definitely work to find comments or legal opinion on whether we actually have to address it for those purposes or not, but keeping it at a 6-page document as opposed to 27, because we addressed everything from A to Z on that. But so definitely good feedback. Thank you.
Respect your feedback as well. And back to Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. All my question has been asked and answered.
Very good. And thank you, everyone around the table. Okay, one more, Councillor Cummings.
Just a quick comment and a recommendation. So hand in hand, we talked a lot about this bylaw, and we've had some good back and forth discussion and answers to questions asked, which is exactly what we were looking at for the committee of the whole discussions rather than here at a council meeting. And that brings up the next point. So we didn't actually put a motion on the floor. We had this discussion, and I think the motion that we should have on the floor is not the motion that is asked of. Unless we want to do first reading and then send it back for revision, which kind of defeats the purpose of having a first reading. I would say let's send it back to revision by administration to bring back at a later date, rather than the motion that's on the RFD, if everybody can, would think that's appropriate.
Doesn't first reading simply just puts it in action? It does have to come back by revisions, does it not?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that once. There's no right or wrong way to do it, I don't believe. How this is worded is my preference, that first reading outside of statutory bylaws, unless, back up, statutory bylaws such as land use bylaw amendments, area structure plans that require public hearing, if those change materially between first reading and second reading, that is improper. They can be struck down judiciously. That's not working today. But this is more of, I think, an easier way to go. The first reading is just introduction to council. Council tears it apart as it sees fit. We bring back second reading, slightly adjusted in this case with many adjustments, but it doesn't really change, I think, council's prerogative past second and third reading, how it sees it. But it really is preference. I don't believe there's a right or wrong way.
I understand your comments, Councillor Cummings. They're good as well. However, I would like, we typically don't get the information feedback. We had protective services here today, so I introduced it and let them talk. Typically, it would just be first reading, and then we would have this conversation when it came back for revisions. But I would then ask for a motion, please, to give first reading. And please note, it's 2024-04 in the motion. Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council give first reading to the traffic bylaw 2024-04 as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I will then call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. And thank you very much for being here to answer our questions today. We'll move down now to page 43, please, and this is item 4B. And today we're looking to give first, second, unanimous consent, and third reading. I will start then with first reading. Motion for first reading, please. Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that bylaw 2024-02, being a boring bylaw to establish a line of credit with the Alberta Treasury Branch, ATB, for the purpose of paying operating expenses, be introduced and given first reading.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. Are there questions from council for first reading? Seeing none then, I'll call for the vote for first reading. Those in favor? That's carried. Second reading, please, Deputy Wilson.
Mayor Dahl, I make the motion that bylaw 2024-02, being a borrowing bylaw to establish a line of credit with Alberta Treasury Branch, ATB, for the purpose of paying operating expenses, be given second reading.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Councillor Walsh, consent for third reading.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council give unanimous consent to present borrowing bylaw 2024-02 for third reading.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. And Councillor Ryan, final reading for third and final reading.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move the bylaw 2024-02, being a borrowing bylaw to establish a line of credit with the Alberta Treasury Branch, ATB, for the purposes of paying operating expenses, be given third reading.
Thank you. Third and final reading. I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We'll move down to page 46, please, of your agenda. This is item 4C, bylaw 2024-03. And today we are looking for the same format. Are you looking to speak to this, or would you like to move forward? Okay, CAO Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I just want to introduce this to council and to the public who may be curious. Purchasing cards does mean credit cards. Question that I had last year seeing this. And administration is asking the council consider doubling the current limit on the purchasing cards for the town, of which we currently have 20 purchasing cards. In the past, those have been primarily used for online expenses and travel, which those expenses alone have increased quite a bit. But now we're even finding vendors for larger scale purchases, especially if it's outside the province or country, prefer having credit cards used, if not for direct purchases, and certainly to hold it. So with an increase of $200,000, that will allow us to strategically increase some of of those cards that are used for the larger scale purchases. As right now we're finding we do run out of room on the average of $4,000 balance pretty quickly. So.
Sure, we all can concur with that in our daily lives, that it's all changed in that world. We'll move forward then with first reading and see where we go from there. I'll ask for a motion. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that bylaw 2024-03 being a borrowing bylaw to establish a total combined amount of credit of $200,000 that can be used for the town of Olds purchasing cards be introduced and given first reading.
I will start now if there's any questions. Seeing none then, I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Second reading, please. Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that bylaw 2024-03 being a borrowing bylaw to establish the total combined amount of credit of $200,000 that can be used for the town of Olds purchasing cards be given second reading.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Unanimous consent. Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that unanimous consent be given to present borrowing bylaw 2024-03 for third reading.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. Unanimous consent for third reading. Call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Councillor Cummings, third and final reading.
I move that bylaw 2024-3 being a borrowing bylaw to establish a total combined amount of credit of $200,000 that can be used for the town of Olds purchasing cards be given third reading.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. We're moving to new business. This would be page 50 of your agenda, please. Item 5A, Kiwanis Music Festival sponsorship. This is an annual ask of many years now. I'll put a motion on the floor, please, and then I'll ask council from there. Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Excuse me, I make the motion that a donation of $1,200 to the Olds and District Kiwanis Music Festival Society for the 2024 Festival of Performing Arts be approved.
Thank you. Does council have questions? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Just a quick question for the CAO. It's coming, it says in source of funding would be from general sponsorships in the annual operating budget. I'm just wondering, would this at all fall under a possible Mountain View Power funding because of it being involved in tourism, that aspect of it, and drawing people into the community?
Thanks, Councillor Ryan. Yes, it could fall under the current Mountain View Power budget under the sponsorship programs, which you'll actually see an RFD coming up. The difference is more in the practice of how we've applied that so far, or how council's applied it. The first thing is recurring requests. I've been trying to steer away from Mountain View Power, more one-off requests that are focused on economic development. And the other thing is more of the attendance that it draws to town, that where something like Oldstoberfest is a bit more clear in that it does attract many thousands of people. Something like the Kiwanis Music Festival, while certainly does quite a lot, not quite that amount. So.
Thank you very much. Fair enough.
Thank you. I will now move forward. Then we have a motion on the floor from Deputy Mayor Wilson. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Page 52, item 5B, and this is council annual standing items schedule 2024. I will start with a motion, please. Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council accepted the council annual standing item schedule 2024 as presented.
Thank you. I only have one question to start with, please. In the council partnerships, I see that our current partnerships are Olds College, Olds Regional Exhibition, and Olds and District Chamber of Commerce. Is the Uptown Olds going to be added to the current listing we have currently on our website for community partners?
Yeah, I believe if it's not there, we should add it, yes.
Thank you. That is new this year for me. I know that we do a lot of work with them, so. Does anyone have any further questions? All right, we have a motion on the floor, please, and I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We're moving now to page 55, item 5C, and I would ask for a motion, please. Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that a sponsorship of $5,000 for the 2024 Alberta College Athletic Conference Men's Volleyball Championship held at Olds College on February 21st to 24th, 2024 be approved.
Thank you. Is, a question to the CEO, is this the actual amount that they asked for, 5,000?
Yes, this actually came to council about 9 or 10 months ago, and it was deferred into 2024 once we had a better picture, specifically in the Mountain View Power budget. So we have touched base again, because at that time we had also written a letter of support for Olds College, which they were then successful proponents to host this provincial tournament. So the request is $5,000. As I mentioned to Councillor Ryan's question just a moment ago, it does fit with Mountain View Power because of the large number of people they're expecting to draw into Olds. It is a one-off expense as opposed to a recurring expense, which, again, trying to get away from Mountain View Power as that community stimulus, economic stimulus logic in the sponsorship program. And it is be the first ask out of the $15,000 line that I'm currently allocating council's budget for Mountain View Power sponsorships, which is separate from the grant program, of course.
Thank you, CEO Williams, for your explanation. Very well done. We have a motion from Councillor Daly. I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. That'll be a great event. Page 57, please, item 5D. And this is from the Council Remuneration Review Committee as presented. I'll go ahead and put a motion on the floor, please, to start with, and then we can discuss from there. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that council accepts the administrative update on the Council Remuneration Review Committee as presented.
Thank you, and I open the floor to any questions from council at this time. It's standard practice to do this, and I thank you for bringing this information to council. I see no questions. The follow-up will come back to us, so I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. All right. We're going to go, just for an update, please, page 71. We're going to, I just want to remind you, this has been updated, and Marcy sent out this morning the update to all council. So DP 23-180 variance relaxation for 22 Vermont Close. Who will we have speak to this? Well, please approach the podium, and thank you very much for being here for us today. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council, and CEO Williams. This is an application by the applicant for a shed to be approved at its current location. The shed is currently at 0.28 meter setback into the side yard side yard. It encroaches into the setback of 22 Vermont Close. 20 Vermont Close. The applicant has gotten a letter from that property owner, and they are in agreement that it can stay located where it's currently located. And management recommends approval of this application, and letters were sent out, and there were no issues presented or concerns.
Well, thank you very much for that. Does anyone have any questions in regards to the application? Councillor Cummings.
Just a couple quick questions here. Most importantly, though, when there's a setback like this, like my property has a setback with the town of Olds, because a piece of my property goes onto town property, and that goes into perpetuity, I believe. In this case, when it's two separate landowners and one current landowner agrees that one current landowner has built something on his property, that's okay. Does that move into perpetuity as well, that the new owners have to agree with this? To me, there's only two reasons to have a setback rule like this. One is a fire safety issue, and the other is litigation control. I'm just curious as to whether or not 22 Vermont sells his home, or 20 Vermont sells his home, the new owner is like pissed off that the shed is in his property. And then this has to be, then it becomes a civil issue. Or does this mitigate all future civil actions between the two parties?
If this variance is approved, it would be okay on the property of 22 Vermont Close. The future purchasers of 20 Vermont Close would have to do a civil suit in order to, if they had any issues with the location of the shed.
Thank you very much for that direct answer. Very good. Any further questions? Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. And just to go along with the inquiry from Councillor Cummings, is this shed on a cement pad or is it movable on skids? Do we know that information?
The shed is on skids.
Thank you. That goes along with that answer.
Thank you very much for that answer. Did I get a motion to put on the floor yet? No, I did not. I would ask for a motion to put this on the floor. Councillor Cummings.
I move that council approve development permit application 23-180 as presented, subject to the conditions listed in the attached draft development permit.
And I do want to thank you for your answers to the questions from council on the draft development permit. And I'll ask council final time. No questions? Then I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Once again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Now, item 6, the Chief Administrator Officer's Report. In the agenda, it states page 71, but it is item 6A, so if you're looking for it by computer, it's 6A. Motion to have this on the floor, and then our CEO can speak to it. Councillor Walsh?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the Chief Administrative Officer report be accepted as presented.
CEO Williams? Your turn.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. So contained in the package is the December 2023 report problem summary, and we will do a proper 2023 review and later, probably in early February, with some changes to the RAP program we hope to implement in Q1 this year. But as mentioned in previous meetings, the use of the RAP function has decreased markedly after summer. So we are focused on ways to direct more complaints that way, but to be fair, on a lighter note, that given the winter we had up until today, it's been a fairly modest call volume coming in. So we're glad to see that. Council action items list is also provided. No major updates since the December 11th meeting, and I do believe council saw and provided comment on 2023-28, the top of salary grid options, so I will provide a wrap up to that based on the previous comments and mark that complete soon. two brief verbal items. The green compost bin pickup scheduled for this week, we're going to have to delay that a couple weeks, as when the contractor started, the bin contents were largely frozen, so nothing was being emptied into the truck. So we will start over from house one, probably the third week of January, once the temperatures warm up, and make sure those people whose bins didn't empty get another crack at it. And hopefully we'll have more people aware that the bins were, the green bins were being picked up this week. And that was a problem, if you recall, a year and a half ago when council suspended winter green bin pickups because the volumes were so low, not just from participation, just from the compost materials not coming out of the bins in winter. So, and that's one good thing about our waste contract, that we can be flexible like this without having to incur any additional costs. And the final thing is just in reference to correspondence. There's a letter from Minister Rick McIver of Municipal Affairs about the LGFF funding formula being finalized. We did get our our allocations for 2024 and 2025. Those are slightly below even our expectations. So our, I believe there's a 42% drop from 2019 is looking closer to 43 to 44. Director Lindeman's away today, so I didn't get to finalize that percentage. So about what we were expecting in terms of capital loss, just a little bit worse. So that's all I have for now.
Thank you. And the item RCO is speaking to, you'll see in your correspondence and information next. Are there any questions? Very good. We have a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. So I do have a question related to the LGFF, so I don't know if I should ask it now, given that it's been put forward, or wait until we get to the next item. So.
I certainly appreciate our CEO bringing it to your attention. However, the letter is in the next correspondence, so that would be a better place. Very good. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And now, if you pay attention to item 7A, the page numbers are different, but it's item 7A, correspondence and information. And there's quite a few items on the schedule. So here would be your opportunity, Deputy Mayor Wilson, to speak to item G.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Through you to the CEO, and perhaps I may know the answer given CAO's comments, but so my understanding is, so for 2024, our LGFF is 1.24 million. 2025, it's 1.4 million. You talked in percentages and increase. Can you remind council and our viewers, citizens, what is our current LGFF at? Do you have that info, or, and if you don't, that's fine, we can.
Not directly in front of me. I'm on the webpage though, so it's I could find it in short order. But yeah, in 2019 it was in the effect of 2.1, 2.2 million, depending on the year. But obviously that is a fairly steep drop, even when we consider the provincial revenue bump that's tied to the 2025, which personally I don't think municipalities should have agreed to, because provincial revenues fluctuate quite a bit in an oil and gas economy, and unlike the provincial government, municipalities aren't allowed to budget deficit. So the fact that we agreed to that seems to be a little, oops.
Go forward.
Thank you, and not supplemental, and certainly not necessarily a question, but just a comment. So obviously, these numbers, these metrics fall well short of what Alberta municipalities had been advocating for in terms of, I think it was about $1 billion total for AB, or for Alberta municipalities, so this seems to fall considerably short. So.
Councillor Cummings?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to address a letter from Rebecca Schultz, the Minister of Environment and Protected Areas. Last month, I think I brought back a report from the Red Deer River Municipal Users Group about the inevitable drought that we're going to be seeing in 2024. This confirms, of course, the province's belief that it will also be a pretty severe drought season. I'm just wondering if we already have in place a policy for a situation like this, or is this something that the administration is going to have to develop from scratch? Yeah,
And even though the letter is somewhat detailed, some further research is required because as part of our water license, every municipality has to have a disruption plan in place, like what happens if you don't have adequate water for your community. And the water restrictions are, along with the commission, logical step in those. So those already exist, but what this letter appears to be alluding to is the climate-related shortage instead of kind of a disruption shortage. So still need more time, but I'm pretty sure we have to develop something new. Is what the province is asking for. I think it'll be largely mimicking what we have already in our water license application and with AEP, but I think we have to get more specific around what the restrictions will be, how they'll be phased, and how that will affect municipal infrastructure, such as the splash park and such as home lawn watering. And I think this is what the minister is referring to. So the council will be seeing some variations of that through the next couple months.
You, Councillor Ryan?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the comment, CEO Williams. I know that at Alberta Munis, I attended a session that was regards to water and drought situation. Okotoks in particular has a lot of issues with the water and water restrictions. However, they suggested using the term conservation as opposed to restrictions, and they got a much better response from their public when they did so. So I would say that if we do develop a plan for that going forward for this year, that we try to go along with the conservation. I think it's probably better if we approach it in that manner, because I do think that a lot of people would be more responsive. Thank you.
Yes, that's an interesting comment for sure. Go ahead, Councillor Daly.
Thank you, and I appreciate the comments that have been made to this point. And conservation is a word that I would agree upon as well. And then some of my thoughts going forward is maybe a recommendation of making the public aware of the situation that we might be leading into, and making use of what we have now for snowfall, whether it be minimal as we see now, but just things like not shoveling your sidewalks onto the street, but rather onto your lawn or onto an area that can absorb the water, rather than allowing it to flow through our infrastructure and back out into a reservoir or whatever. So I think a recommendation I would think is that we make the awareness to the public sooner rather than later, so that some of this can be maybe mitigated a bit right off the bat using the snowball. Just an idea. Thank you.
See, places like our golf course, if we don't get the rains and what they need to help support them there. I agree. Can I get a motion on the floor, please? Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the correspondence and information report ending January 8th, 2024 be received for information.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, council members and CAO and staff. We will now be moving into a closed session. Before we move into the closed session, I will note that when council goes into a closed session for continued participation in the virtual council meeting, stay online in the live stream meeting platform, and the meeting stream will be replaced by graphic and music will play. When the music stops, the meeting will be reconvening. Thank you very much. If you miss us, please watch us on live stream. I would ask at this time, please, for a motion to move into a closed session. Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we move into closed session at 2:32 with all in attendance.
And the FOIP issue, please.
Oh, sorry. FOIP issue, Section 17, disclosure harmful to personal privacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, and I'll take a 5-minute recess. Welcome back. Welcome back, and thank you very much for your patience and your time. At this time, we're going to rise and report, and I'm going to call on Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to take this opportunity to move that Mrs. Mary Jane Harper be appointed the Town of Old's business representative on the Central Alberta Economic Partnership. For a term to end at the annual organizational meeting in 2024.
Thank you very much. I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you all, and thank you for your time, listeners and viewers. And the meeting will be adjourned at 2:52 p.m.